And so, yeah, today's topic is around AI. So, a very relevant, very interesting topic. But we're going to really focus in on using AI for your training business and how to go about that and what that looks like. Um, Before we do get started, a few kind of housekeeping things. You'll see that in the bottom of your screen, you've got a chat window and a Q&A window. So as we're going through the content today, feel free to kind of post questions, comments, thoughts as we go. And then we'll either respond to those questions, where it makes sense, but we've also got some dedicated time at the end of the webinar to kind of go over any questions we haven't answered as we went through the content. We do have Bianca as also kind of behind the scenes there. Bianca, do you want to quickly say hi?
Hi, everyone. I'm the Senior Field Marketing Manager here at Arlo, and I'll just be behind the scenes, fielding questions, and just kind of dealing with the kind of back end of everything. Yeah.
Fantastic. So yeah, let's get started. Before we jump into the content, to quickly introduce myself. So my name is Andre, and I serve as the North American Regional Manager here at Arlo. I've worked at Arlo for just over 5 years, and in that time, I've had the privilege of helping hundreds of training providers optimize and scale their businesses. Uh, for those who don't know who Arlo is, so we're a software company and we make software for instructor-led training businesses. And so we're really there to help automate all the kind of manual work that goes into scheduling, managing, delivering courses. As you can see, some of the numbers up there on the screen, hundreds of thousands of courses scheduled through the platform. We've, trained over 7.5 million people. And then in terms of the automation side of things, one of the key pieces of that is automating all the emails that go out, registration confirmations, reminders, follow-ups. You can see there over 100 million emails we've automated for our clients. And then for the training providers that are selling those courses externally, we've helped them sell over $3 billion worth of training. Awesome. But today we are lucky enough to be joined by Scott D'Amico. Scott is the EVP of Sales and Marketing at an organization called Logical Operations. And Scott brings over 2 decades of experience in the education and training space. So definitely lucky to have him joining us today. But he's also a real thought leader in the industry and is the host of the top-rated podcast, Communicast. So Scott, thank you for being here. Yeah, looking forward to getting into this. So I'll hand it over to you so we can get into the meat of today's topic.
Absolutely. Thank you, Andre, for the introduction. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here today to co-present this webinar with you and talk a little bit about generative artificial intelligence, or Gen AI. And if you're like me, you probably started hearing about this about a year or so ago when ChatGPT came onto the scene. And something that it piqued my interest very quickly. Primarily, to be honest, I used it to make funny poems and songs with my kids and pets' names in it. But very quickly started to realize the truly transformative power of this technology on business, and specifically within the training space. As Andre mentioned, my name is Scott D'Amico. I'm the EVP of Sales and Marketing for Logical Operations, and really have spent my entire career in the education and training space. For those of you that are not familiar with Logical Operations, we make courseware for training businesses. We specialize primarily in technology training courseware. We've been around for over 40 years. Our content has been used to train more than 50 million students. We have over 5,000 content courses that either we've developed or we've leveraged our partners, more than 20 different partners, to bring high quality, relevant courseware and make that available for our training partners throughout the world. So I'm really excited to be here today. What we're going to talk a lot about today is how can we harness this new technology of Gen AI specifically for a training business. So if you are running a few training centers, you work for a large training organization, or you're a solopreneur, you're a coach, you're doing training on your own, there are ways that you can use these tools to be more effective. We're going to kick it off to talk a little bit about the difference between artificial intelligence and Gen AI. We'll then go into what makes a good prompt. Just like with most things in life, what you get out of it is only as good as what you put into it. There we're going to get a little bit more specific into how can you use Gen AI for a training business, and then wrap up to talk about what to be aware of when it comes to Gen AI, and then really what's coming next with generative AI. We're going to, I think, have the opportunity to get a sneak peek into some of the cool Gen AI tools that Arlo is building into their platform. Before we get started and dive into the content, I just have a quick discussion question, a quick poll to put out there. So it should be popping up on the screen now. And if you can select one of those, it's really, how do you currently interact with AI in your daily life? You regularly use the tools and technology in your job. You're more technical. You help design and develop those solutions. Really, your role doesn't involve any type of AI, or you primarily do it in your personal life, right? Smart devices, apps, things like that. So we'll give you about 30 or so seconds to go through and put your options into there before we close out the poll and see how the responses are going. That'll kind of help give us an idea as to who's on the call and maybe if we need to focus more or less in certain areas. And as that is wrapping up, all right, so it looks like over half of the participants regularly use these AI tools in their job. Doesn't seem like we have a very highly technical audience here, which is probably pretty good. Not a lot of folks in here that are really developing those solutions on their own. Some folks really don't use it at work, and about a third of folks interact with it on a daily basis at home. So that's good context for me as I'm going through this. So as I think about, when it comes to artificial intelligence, it's really important to differentiate between AI and Gen AI. So you'll hear both of those terms thrown around quite a bit. We'll talk about both of them in our session today. So artificial intelligence is, in essence, the ability of machines to exhibit human-like intelligence. And I would be willing to bet that almost everyone on this webinar today has been interacting with artificial intelligence in some way, whether it's at work or at home, for years. So if you think about machines exhibiting human-like intelligence, that can simply be Netflix. If you have a Netflix or a Prime Video subscription, or Hulu, or Paramount, or Disney Plus, all of the countless streaming services that are out there, those have been using AI to say, you've watched Yellowstone, you probably will also like this. It's compiling all the data as who's watched what they rated it, what they watch next, to give you those recommendations. If you have a personal home assistant, I'm not going to say the name because there is one in my office and it will start chiming in and wanting to have a conversation, but that's using artificial intelligence to give you the correct responses as to what you're asking for, to make recommendations, things like that. Your mail service, if you use, whether it's Outlook, Gmail, things like that, it's using AI to determine this is likely a scam, or this is spam, this is a receipt, this is a promotional email, this is an important email, so it should be prioritized for you and in your focused inbox. If you're like me and directionally challenged, and every time you go somewhere, you need to have a navigation tool, whether it's Waze, Google Maps, Apple Maps, whatever it is, those are using artificial intelligence to get you from point A to point B, as well as to say, perhaps you might want to consider rerouting because there's lots of traffic up here. It'll be quicker to go this way. And then finally, a big part of AI is really around health and fitness. I know Apple's a big player in this, whether you have a Fitbit, one of those Aura rings, it's really starting to use AI to pick up and look at the patterns of all the data that it's collecting to be able to give you information and to make recommendations. So if you think artificial intelligence, it's really how can a machine start to exhibit some of those human-like thinking patterns. And when looking at AI, there's really two different ways to look at it. Narrow AI is where we are today. It's kind of approximate human cognitive traits. It really doesn't have a capacity for reasoning, and it's really good at solving one or a few designated specific problems. As I mentioned, that's where we are today. On the other side of it, when it comes to general AI, not to be confused with Gen AI or generative AI, General AI is the thinking that at some point, machines are going to have the same or really better cognition than humans. It can just multiply and extrapolate out its reasoning when solving problems. It can solve multiple new problems and do it at the same time, do it very quickly. Not a reality yet. And I will say, depending on who you ask, you will get wildly different responses as to when this will be a reality, from a couple of years from now to some people don't believe we will ever get there. So I will leave it to you to kind of make that determination. But I will say this is a field that is advancing rapidly, literally by the minute, by the hour, by the day. Things are changing and advancing in the artificial intelligence field. So when it comes to generative AI or GenAI, it's a type of artificial intelligence that involves generating new original data, in essence, content that did not exist before. So when you go into a tool like ChatGPT or Claude from Anthropic or Google Gemini or Meta, DALL-E 3 to get an image, it is not simply regurgitating and copying and pasting something to give you a response. It has been trained on, I can't even imagine the number, millions and millions and billions of volumes of data, whether it's just articles or videos and websites. It's been trained on this, and it is creating new content based on what it has learned from the existing content. I'm going to give you some specific examples here in a minute for those of you that are not super familiar with these tools. But as I mentioned, it's growing by the day. It seems like every day a new company is coming out, or a new tool is coming out, or an updated version is coming out with some of these Gen AI tools. So what we're going to talk about now is really how we can augment human tasks when it comes to using Gen AI. Before I do that, I'm just going to pause. And Bianca, I don't know, are there any general questions in the chat pot yet around the difference between AI and Gen AI?
No questions as of now, but everybody feel free to add questions throughout the talk, and then, we can stop periodically and get those questions answered.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bianca. So when it comes to generative AI and being able to use it to augment our tasks, what most people know it for immediately is when it comes to, say, like a chat GPT or Google Gemini, with creating text. So you ask it a question, it gives you a response back. And in a minute here, I'm going to share my screen and kind of walk you through a couple of examples of what it can do generally. And then later on in the talk, we're going to get really specific into the training space. But for those of you that aren't using these tools on a regular basis, start to think about, as I go through some of these prompts, how you potentially use it in your organization. So text is one of the big things that people use it for. The next one is image generation. So the prompt on this one was, and I think this may have been through Meta, this initial picture was created. Provide me a photograph of a monkey typing at a typewriter, wearing a small hat in an office, make it realistic, make it highly detailed. And so before that prompt went in, these images did not exist. These images were created based off of all of the millions and millions and millions of images that the tool had been trained on to start to figure, okay, what would that look like? And it's making the predictions as to what it would look like. And then the third one that we're seeing a lot of folks use is video. How can you use generative AI to perhaps turn text into not only audio, but now using avatars to make that audio come to life where it looks like a person is speaking in your video. So as we go from text to image to video, I will say the skill level and the complexity goes up. The processing power needed to do it efficiently goes up, right? So you need a little bit stronger computer to do it, to keep up with it, the bandwidth on your internet, and then also the time that it takes for the tools to generate these responses is going to increase. So as the complexity goes up, the time, the resources needed to do it will also go up. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to shift gears a little bit and share my screen. And Andre, are you able to see ChatGPT now?
Sure can. Yep, you're good to go.
Perfect. So I'm just going to start with a very general prompt. And for some of you, this may be basic. Some of you, this might blow your mind seeing it, depending on if you've used it before. But a simple question: how is coffee grown and processed? So by putting that basic prompt in, and we're going to talk later about how you prompt the tools and the different responses you're going to get and the importance of how you prompt it. So you can start to see it's going through step by step how that whole life cycle goes. Very, very detailed. Now, what I might look at that and say, you know what, that's too complex. So I'm going to go back and explain it to me like I'm a second grader. So it's going to start to make it a little bit more simple and fun. So you can see the amount of text coming out is a little bit less. Some of the words that they're using are going to be different, right? Coffee comes from special trees that grow little red fruit called cherries. It's bringing it down a level based on the prompt that I put in. Let's say that I run either a coffee shop or maybe I roast coffee and sell it to coffee shops. I might want to turn that into a blog post. So I say, all right, take that content, turn it into a blog post that maybe I can put on my website. And you can see it's starting to put icons in there. And then once it's given me a blog post, I've now put this on my site. Maybe I send it out through my email distribution list, however it is that I'm communicating with my clients. I'll say, okay, now turn it into something that will be good for Facebook and Instagram with the goal of driving traffic to my website. Now, you may have noticed that prompt was a little bit different. We're going to talk about this later, some of the keys to prompting, where I gave it some goals, I gave it some outcomes, and I also told it to pretend to be someone or to be someone else. And so it's going to change things up based on those prompts. So once again, how do I do this? Dumb it down for me. I'm not there with you. Turn it into some sort of content, take that content, repurpose it into something else. So start to think about from a training center, whether it is from your marketing, your sales, or even some of your content, how a tool like this could be beneficial. Now, if I go to a different gear, and this is a different tool, Google Gemini, is I want to create an image. So similar to that, the monkey at the typewriter, this is create an image of a playful Dalmatian with a red collar playing outside of a small town firehouse in the spring. So I gave it some details to work with. And you'll notice the processing time, a little bit slower than the text, where the text was immediately coming out. So we can see, not perfect, and Andre can attest to this. We did a dry run of this yesterday. I put the same prompt in, and Andre, is that a completely different picture than yesterday?
It sure is. Sure is.
So it's creating net new content every time you go in there. Like this one's a little odd because the collar looks maybe a little bit big, like it had its leash and it kind of broke off. But you can see the Dalmatian, it looks happy and playful. The grass is green. The red door to me signifies it's probably a firehouse. The red and the brick is a symbol of the firehouses. So once again, from a training perspective, if I'm needing some sort of images for my training classes, for slides or for workbooks, or if I want to do social media posts and you don't have a license to Getty Images, you want to make sure that you're getting the right things. Very cool tools out there like Gemini and DALL-E 3 that is part of ChatGPT OpenAI family that generates images for you. And then the final thing I touched on was around video. This is a tool called Synthesia. And this is a free version that I've been toying around with. But in essence, I spent, I'd say literally 5 minutes on this, putting some generic copy into it. And I am not sure with how I have my screen shared. Let me see. I just want to make sure you're going to be able to hear the audio. Let's see here. And Andre, let me know if
I'll
you
let
can
you
hear
know
it.
if, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear it. It's quite quiet, but we can hear it.
Okay.
Ambition meets innovation. At the heart of our company is a commitment to excellence and a passion for making a difference. Our teams work tirelessly, delivering outstanding results and crafting solutions for tomorrow.
All right, I'm not going to play the whole thing there, especially because the audio on that isn't great. But those are not people that work for Logical Operations. This is with a free version of this tool. where I picked out the avatar, I picked the particular voice that I wanted them to have, put in my text, and then through the generative AI, it starts to create it and make it look like they are delivering the text that I have put in there. So once again, with my training brain going on, I'm starting to think, okay, how can we start to use this in some of the training programs that we do? Okay. So beyond that, right, beyond the text, the images, and the video, it goes way beyond whether it is creating 3D images or 3D models, coding. I've used ChatGPT to help me with some website code. I know our tech team uses ChatGPT and other Gen AI tools on a regular basis to help them solve some coding problems they're working through, creating music, speech, as I mentioned, text to speech, all different types of things that you can think about to generate novel, net new content. There's likely something out there. All right, so once again, before I jump into prompting, Bianca, anything out there around some of those Gen AI tools that I just shared?
Yes. So we have a question here from Paul. He asks, wonder if there are signing avatars using American Sign Language, question mark.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Yep. Wonder if there are signing avatars, so that's like American Sign Language, using American Sign Language. So I think he's wondering if there are any AI avatars that we just spoke about that can use sign language rather than speech. Yep.
So yeah, so are there Gen AI avatars using American Sign Language? To be honest,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a fantastic idea. If somebody's not out there, if there's not a company out there doing it, I'm willing to bet there's something out there, likely much more advanced tool. Because what I will say, when it comes to video avatars, you'll notice a lot of them are relatively static, right? So they're not gesturing as much. But if it's not there yet, I'm willing to bet it will be, I would bet within 12 months, just with how quickly this technology is advancing.
Great question. Super interesting. Yeah.
All righty. So want to talk a little bit about what makes a good prompt. The rise of tools like ChatGPT, in essence, have created an entirely new job field called prompt engineering. In essence, this is the idea of refining your input until it produces the desired output from a Gen AI model. So what you get out really is dependent upon what you put in. So when it comes to good prompts, there's really, I would say, no universal good prompt, because it's going to change based somewhat on the tool that you're using. Every tool, whether it is, Gemini, ChatGPT, Claude, Gronk, whatever, can be a little bit different based on what you put into it. And it's just going to take time and learning what gets you the responses that you want. Some general best practices: be iterative with it. If you don't get exactly what you're looking for the first time around, ask again, rephrase it, try it a little bit differently. And oftentimes they will ask, did this meet your expectations? Be descriptive, but also we don't want to be overly verbose. We don't need paragraphs and paragraphs going in. And one of the things I'll touch on when I start sharing the screen here in a little bit is you can, depending on the tool you're using, and if you're using a free plan or a paid plan, you can train these tools on your particular business. So you don't have to give it as much detail each time. It's going to know it and it's going to remember it. Provide relevant examples. And then just, if you find something that's good, save it, reuse it, continue to refine it, save it, reuse it. And then a few additional best practices. A couple of these are very key. One is to assign your chatbot a persona. You can kind of see it on the example there. I have a 6-month leadership development program. Pretend you're a learning and development expert with 10 years of experience designing these solutions for Fortune 500 companies. That's the persona that I have given that. So it's going to start to dig through all of its training to see, what do I have that relates back to this type of experience? Ask it for sources. Specifically, if you're asking for statistics or something that's very critical, you want to make sure that you are getting sources for it, because these tools, just like humans, they do make mistakes. So they are not infallible. So that's important to ask for sources. Another one that I found is very helpful is ask for the rationale. So the way that these tools work, in essence, you'll notice they start producing text very quickly. But as they're doing that, they're very quickly trying to predict the next word that's going to come out. So when you ask it to think about it and provide its rationale, it actually goes through that exercise and will provide you the rationale as to why it did it. So there at least is a rhyme and a reason as to why it provided you what it gave you. So you can see my last thing is, before you provide it, think about it and share your rationale for each way. Know the model's restrictions. So every model is going to be different, depending, as I mentioned, the tool you're using, the company it's coming from, paid versions, free versions. So for example, when I first started using ChatGPT, either it was very early this year or late last year, it had only updated data, I believe, to like 2021. It couldn't provide any type of external links. It couldn't go out and read external links that I provided to it. So it had this limited data set. So just make sure that as you're working with a tool, you do know the restrictions, and then you attend training. There's lots and lots of training out there around GenAI tools. Now, shameless plug for Logical Operations. If you're a training center, we offer courseware around GenAI, AI, and then also how to use GenAI tools in spreadsheets and documents and things like that. So there's lots of good stuff out there. So what I'm going to do now is just kind of quickly share my screen again. Just go into a ChatGPT tool. And so I have a couple of prompts. Let's see here. So this is the one that I shared earlier. I'm just pulling it so I don't have to type it all. Right. I have a 6-month leadership program. Give me 10 ways to personalize this content for a group of frontline managers from our business analyst group. So I plug that in, even without me putting my IP into that. It knows enough about general leadership programs for frontline leaders. It's starting to give me some examples about how I can personalize this for this particular audience. So you can see it's going to go through, kind of give me all the different options. And I can continue to ask it and refine it and ask for different things, or say expand on point 7, and it'll give me more details around that. And I mentioned this a couple minutes ago. So I use the paid version of ChatGPT. I believe it's like $20 a month for an individual user. So with that, I can create my own GPTs. And so you can see I have one. So as Andre mentioned, I have a podcast. I have a GPT that is a podcast growth expert. So it knows strategies around how to build your audience, how to drive audience engagement. I have another one that's a training content designer, right? So if we want to build training content, it has been trained in that and knows certain things that I've prompted it with. And then this is for Logical Operations, more of a marketing tool around product spotlights and things like that to showcase different courses that we have. So you can build out your own GPTs and customize them so you're not having to train them so much. So another example really quickly is, for those of you in the training space, know that reinforcement is key if we want to bring about behavioral change. So let's say I have a 2-day training course on public speaking. Pretend you are. I give it its persona. I ask it to think about it and share the rationale. So I wanted 10 ways to repurpose my training content so that it can be used for follow-up activities that will bring about behavioral change. And you can see, right, it's giving me a bunch of different options here. And then one other thing to look at when you are in the settings of your tool, you can come up under settings. This is ChatGPT on the paid version. I believe the free version is the same. And it deals with data controls, improve the model for everyone. So I have that turned off. So if I were to put something in here, they're not taking that information and using it and putting it into their algorithms. That's the one caveat that I always share. And we'll talk a little bit about it later when we start to think about, some of the risks or things to be aware of when it comes to GenAI tools, is that I would not put anything into an AI tool that I would be concerned if I accidentally emailed it to my competitor. So if you think about that every time, and the same thing, if you're going to train your employees or encourage your employees to do this, is if I would be like, oops, if I sent that out to my competitors, don't put it in there, especially for kind of these more open public tools. Now, there are a lot of companies out there where in essence, you're building your own little universe and it's definitely not getting pushed out. Those ones a lot different than say using a tool like this. Even with that setting off, I still tread lightly as to what I do put into the tool. All right, so Bianca, before we kind of jump into a little bit more specific around the training business, any questions in there about prompt engineering?
No question about prompts, but we do actually have a really cool update about our previous question about ASL and AI.
Oh, yeah.
Mark here highlighted that he found a website called signavatar.org, and they're a solution for ASL and AI. So that's really cool.
Very cool. That's awesome. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
All right, so I want to talk a little bit about, if I kind of put my training organization hat on, and some of the ways that we use that Gen AI from, say, a logical operations perspective, or our sister organization Communispawn that does soft skills training, just different ways that we use it, what we're thinking about. What we've seen really so far, and this I would say kind of the first two span across really any industry. Most companies today are using and seeing the most results of using Gen AI across their marketing and their sales functions. I believe the third is really around, I would say, accounting and finance, and then in kind of their development coding type of applications where they're seeing the most use of it and seeing the best results. But if I think about augmenting existing work, whether it's from marketing, sales, customization, program reinforcement, brainstorming, or starting to take routine tasks and automate them, it's a great way to try to be much more efficient and effective with your work, meaning that efficiency, it's going to take you a lot less time with using a tool like Chat GPT or Gemini, maybe to write a marketing email for your company, or to come up with a sales campaign for one of your training programs. So just a brief example off to the right there on your screen, that's a screenshot from one of the programs that we run through Arlo. So Arlo is a partner of ours. We use their platform. It's integrated into our website. But this is something where we have a description of the course. And so very quickly, I can pull that description, plug it into a tool like Chat GPT or Gemini and say, you know what, make this a little bit more compelling, make this a little bit more engaging, more exciting, with the goal of getting people to sign up for the program. So rather than me kind of going through there and trying to reformat, retype it, I put it into that tool and it can easily bring it back in. Same thing from sales. If I have a program coming up that we're trying to promote, this upcoming class in Chicago, I might take the link to this class, put it into a Gen AI tool and say, create me a social media campaign over the next 30 days to try to promote this course. And it's going to give me day by day, week by week, what I can do. And to the point where you can, depending on how you prompt it and how you want the output, where it will put it into a table for you. On Monday, do this on Instagram, do this on Facebook, do this on LinkedIn. On Wednesday, do this. So it's really quite amazing as to what it can help you do. We saw an example earlier about using this tool to try and customize an existing program. I shared a brief example about how you can use this for reinforcement. Say, I have this course, I want to make sure I have reinforcement activities, kind of get you at least a starting point. Brainstorming is a great way to use this tool. And next, I think I'm going to talk about some integrations with different project management tools that can kind of help on the brainstorming front. But maybe you're thinking about developing a new training course. Using Gen AI tools can really help you along the way to, in essence, build out a net new course, right? And spoiler alert, I think Arlo is going to have some tools probably around that that they're going to talk about here in a minute. And then just automating routine tasks. So when you think about Gen AI, some of the examples that we've talked about, really that's kind of just the baseline of how you can use it, right? Creating new images, creating videos, creating content. When you take a Gen AI tool and combine it with an API or some sort of workflow with a program like Zapier. So Zapier is organization in the middle that in essence creates no code connections between different software applications. So by using a tool like Zapier and connecting it to a GPT tool or a Gen AI tool, maybe I'm connecting it to WordPress with my website, and I'm also connecting it to my LinkedIn account. And then I could even bring in, say, like Google Keyword Planner. And I want to create blog posts that are focused on X, Y, and Z keywords, right? So maybe it's Microsoft Excel training. That's the keyword I want to focus on. The AI tool can create 20 different blogs for you, automatically zap them through Zapier over into your WordPress site and publish them maybe once a day, once a week, whatever your cadence is. Once it goes from your WordPress site, you can zap it back over into the Gen AI tool with a prompt of convert this into a post that's relevant for LinkedIn. Once that's done, Zapier can send it to your LinkedIn account, schedule it, automatically post it. So you just have this running in the background 24/7, prompting it however often you want it to go out. Second component is maybe around dealing with customer inquiries, using Gen AI tools and connecting them with the chat bot on your website to be able to all day, every day, field incoming questions from clients, answer those questions, or get them connected to the right folks. Even when inquiries come in, if somebody fills out a form on your site, it comes into, say, your CRM, the CRM zaps that over into the AI tool, the Gen AI tool through Zapier, creates a response based on how you've trained it, based on the tone of the message. Is it a concern? Is it a thank you? Is it a question about a product? And then kind of zapping it back either into a draft to be reviewed and then sent, or depending on how well it's working, sent off to the client. Down here is a company called Trello, which I believe is a project management tool. Just say every time you create a new project in there, you can automatically zap that over to a Gen AI tool to start brainstorming ideas for it. Once it has that, it can create a zap and send it out to an email distribution list that is assigned to that particular project. Taking stuff in from SurveyMonkey, evaluating the responses, providing recommendations, once again, sending results out to people across the organization that are relevant to see it. We talked a little bit about Gmail, where an email earlier, well, I read an article recently where every single email they receive goes into a Gen AI tool. A response is automatically drafted, put into their draft folder. At the end of the day or halfway through the day, they simply review, send, edit, send, and it's saving them tons of time on their email. And then even with tools like Zoom, right? If you're doing a recording and it's providing you a transcript of that meeting, once a transcript is available, it can be zapped over into a Gen AI tool, which provides a summary and a recap. And that recap is then sent out into to whoever is relevant, internal stakeholders, or perhaps people on the call. So there's so many different ways when you go that next level above from just content creation to starting to create workflows with tools like Zapier that really can help you continue to automate and enhance what you're doing. Bianca, any questions on that?
No, so we actually have a question here by Paul. He says, are there any AI tools that generate characters and depict the speaker to save money by not hiring actors? So let me copy and paste that so you can see.
So are there AI tools that, let me see. So I would say I would look into tools like Synthesia, which is somewhat similar, where it has a set of stock actors that you can choose from and avatars you can choose from that, and then you plug in your text and it's them kind of reading out your content. As I mentioned, the one that I shared is a free version. As you kind of go into more paid versions, you have a lot more options of voices, accents, characters. And then beyond that, I know there's so much going on in the simulation realm, and we'll talk a little bit about that at the end, kind of like where we are now, what's coming next with AI. is a lot more simulations where we're seeing avatars that are much more advanced than kind of just the static talking heads. So for a starting point, I would look at a company like Synthesia.
And I'll just quickly add, Scott, that there's I've also seen some tools out there that you can speak into them for a while, and they'll be able to then replicate your voice. So that there is stuff in that space if you're wanting to kind of replicate your own voice or avatar, and then kind of use that to create content. So it is out there for sure.
Absolutely. And I just saw an announcement a couple weeks ago from Meta dealing with language translation. So they're taking the video of, say, me delivering this right now and being able to reproduce it with me, say, speaking this in Spanish. Not only is it translating the language, it's adapting my face to make it look like the words are matching what's coming out of my mouth.
Yeah, super awesome.
All right, so as we think about AI and Gen AI, really there's this whole field now around data ethics. So it, in essence, just applies to the creation, collection, and the use of data. So if we think about it, all day, every day, organizations are collecting information about us, whether that is through your smart assistant, through what you're watching on TV, your search history, your navigation history, literally everywhere you're going, all these different things, the groceries that you buy, how much you actually collecting lots of data. So companies really have to think about, okay, what are we going to do and how are we using that data responsibly? So it's something as businesses thinking about the information that you're collecting around your students, your participants, how that information is being used. And then AI ethics kind of takes that and adds the layer on, okay, we have data, which is one thing to think about. We need to protect that data. But now once we start applying all these advanced algorithms against that to make recommendations for people or to bring new content to them or develop content that's personalized for it, we really need to just kind of start to think about, are we doing the right thing and the best thing for people? And when it comes to concerns around AI and Gen AI, one thing I talked about, right? These tools can make mistakes. We need to make sure that the accuracy is there with what we are putting out. We want to make sure if it's trained on our business, that it's not conflicting with what we teach. So that's why whenever we create content through it, it always goes through a human set of eyes to review it, to edit it, to modify it. We just want to make sure that these tools are not amplifying existing bias. And we've seen examples of this over the past year where tools are producing content that is just not right, not historically accurate, and then also amplifying some existing biases and discriminations that are out there. A big thing right now is the impact on the workforce. There's a interesting statistic we'll get to here in a little bit. There's lots of concerns are the machines coming for our jobs? And I will say this has happened pretty much in any time there's been a big technological advancement and revolution, whether it was from the internet to the personal computer, all the way back to the beginning of the printing press. People were worried about this. And what we're going to see is kind of a shifting and a reskilling of people. And then just making sure, being aware of deep fakes, right? It's getting to the point now where technology is able to create things that look so real, it's hard to determine what's real, what's not. And then just quickly, what's next? I want to be thoughtful of time here. So when we're thinking of Gen AI, as I mentioned, it's advancing so rapidly. We are quickly getting to the point where AI generated content is becoming indistinguishable from human made content, right? The video I shared earlier, you could still tell, right? But some of the higher end paid versions, more sophisticated tools out there are creating things where, like I said, you really cannot tell. Same thing with text. You can kind of tell when something's been ran through Chat GPT. A lot of the words get repeated or the tone of it. It's just like it's getting to that point where it's going to be almost indistinguishable. We're going to continue to see efficiencies through automating tasks. We're seeing big improvements when it comes to simulations and role plays from a training perspective. It's helping to bring the cost of those types of tools down. It's also bringing the barriers down, barriers of entry to it, and the ability and resources to be able to keep them up and keep them running, coming down quite a bit. And we're going to see a lot more personalization. The expectations of people when it comes to training, especially in the age of Gen AI, is they're really expecting a lot more to be tailored and personalized to them. And we've touched on just kind of the increase, the improved communications with computers and other language speakers. So I think I mentioned a statistic coming up. It's estimated that over the next 3 years, 40% of the workforce is going to need to be reskilled due to the advancements in artificial intelligence, whether it is learning new AI skills or learning how to do their job differently because of the AI tools that are being there. And almost 90% of executives surveyed really put AI and Gen AI in the top 3 of their priorities for 2024. So this is something that is having a major impact on virtually every business out there. I'm sure there are ways where companies that we can't even think about yet are already starting to use AI and Gen AI in their businesses. And speaking of that, kind of transition it over to Andre, just to talk about some examples of how Arlo's really starting to think about using these AI tools to help augment what we're doing and make training that much more efficient and effective.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. As you mentioned, as a software provider, we're definitely watching the AI space very closely and starting to think about how do we want to incorporate that into our product. So I'll just spend a couple minutes showing one example of how we're going to do that in the near future. Which is course authoring and delivery. And so this is all about the ability for you to create and host e-learning content inside of Arlo. And so this is coming in the first half of 2025, so early 2025. So you can see here, you've got, you're going to create a new course in Arlo with this builder, and there's some key AI features that I'll kind of touch on. So you can see on the far right option there, the white one that says start from scratch. This would just be kind of your typical way of creating an e-learning module. You can create different sections, whether that's text, video, images. You can kind of build the course manually. The option in the middle there, the yellow one, allows you to use prompting, kind of similar to what Scott was showing earlier, to generate a course automatically based on the criteria you give the tool. And then the blue option on the far left is really impressive, where you can upload your existing content. So whether that's documents, PowerPoint presentations, any resources potentially you're using for your instructor-led training. And it's going to then be able to turn that into engaging, interactive e-learning modules automatically. And so we'll give a quick example at the moment. If you go to the next slide there, Scott, of using that middle option. So that yellow option of giving a prompt to the AI, and it's going to then generate a course. So you can see here, I've just put in a prompt. It says, create a course for a business called Epic Training. Please make the course content for first aid. The course is aimed at people who have never taken a first aid class before. Please name the course First Aid for Beginners. So this is a very basic prompt. In many cases, you'd be giving it a bit more specific instructions around what you want the course to cover. But if you do go to the next slide, Scott, we'll just see a video of me putting that prompt into the tool and what it spits out there. So if you go ahead and play that video. Awesome. You can maybe make that full screen. So you can see here we're going through and entering that. It's asking us a few questions around the style and the tone that we want the course to be in. And then now the AI is doing its magic based on that prompt I've given it. So there we go. It's ready to go. We can click on to create that course. And it's now actually building out that module based on the prompt we've given it. So you can see it's got that first slide. It's adding some images. It's not just, putting blocks of text, but it's actually incorporating different types of elements, interactive components to make that course really engaging. So we'll give it another few seconds there to finish it. And it's just about done. And you can see there we go, that course has been created. And so that video, wasn't sped up at all. That was, as is, and that was how quickly it can really create a course based on a prompt that it's being given. Go to the next slide. Yeah. One other way we can kind of incorporate AI in there is when you're building quizzes. So, one piece of an e-learning kind of module, you may want to test people's knowledge after a particular section or even at the end of the course. And we can obviously build those manually, into the questions we want, into the options or content of that quiz. But this is another place we can use that AI. So we could instead ask the tool, ask Arlo to generate a quiz automatically based on the content you've already entered into that e-learning course, whether it's just a section of the course or the entire course. And you can see here it's built in that quiz as well. And then one final way, you just come to the next slide there, Scott, of we can kind of embed that AI into Arlo is how Scott mentioned around using AI to generate images. And so you can see here we've got a piece of the e-learning course where it's talking about that first aid, and then on the right hand side you would typically be able to upload your own images, but here we can also use AI to generate that automatically if you so please. So those are just a couple ways that AI is going to be embedded in. Obviously, we've only just really touched the surface. But if you jump to that last slide there, Scott, you can see here a quick preview of what that module looks like now. So you can go ahead and play that video. I think if you click on that. So once that e-learning has created that foundation, you'll be able to go in there, make any changes, brand it how you want, using your colors, etc., to kind of really fit the style and look and feel that you want. And all of this is then able to be connected to any of the courses you sell. We've got a quiz here as well. And all of the content that's generated automatically is fully responsive. So whether people are accessing your courses on a desktop, a mobile, a tablet, it's going to look great regardless. So yeah, there's just a quick example of that tool. And then just jump onto that last slide as well.
Oops.
It's okay. So yeah, just touch the surface really of that new course authoring feature. Whether you're an existing Arlo customer or you're new to Arlo or looking at Arlo as a potential solution, that QR code there will take you to a form where you can kind of request early access to the feature. You can kind of register your interest. So yeah, feel free to scan that QR code and fill on that form if it is of interest to you. And I think, Bianca, if you don't mind popping that link in the chat as well, just to make it easy for people if they do want to jump back to that as we continue. Awesome. We've now got a bit of time for Q&A for any questions that have come up, from any of the content we've covered today, all the way back to kind of comparing Gen AI to AI, obviously how you can use it in a training business, prompting, then kind of what the future looks like as well, and the ethics of AI, and also obviously just what we saw there of some of the ways that we're looking at adding AI to Arlo, which obviously is a training software. So, Bianca, any questions there?
So we do have a couple of questions coming in. Andre, this one's for you. We have an anonymous question here that asks, when it comes to creating your own course using Arlo's creation tool, who owns the content that is generated via our website?
Great question. So the tool, obviously, that we're generating is for you to use, and so the content that you create through the tool is your content, and Arlo itself doesn't own that content; it would be your content. Good question.
Yeah, no, that was a great question. And then Scott, while you were talking, we had some questions coming in as well. We have a question here from Cecilia. She says, can you mention any software that translates text into other languages?
So yeah, what tools are there out there that translate text into other languages? So depending on the output that you're looking for, simply text is Google Translate is one of the best ways to do that. So if you just go in, plug it, English to Spanish, Spanish to English, English to French, whatever it may be, is one great tool. And I know it's a very free to use tool. But even when I believe in Synthesia, as I was going through there were options for translation. So it depends on if you're looking for the audio and kind of from a avatar type of thing or versus just purely translation. I would start with Google.
Yeah, no, great answer. Great answer. Okay, we have more questions coming in. Let's see. We have Mandy. So Mandy's here asking, Andre, this would be for you. Do you have to worry about AI pulling copyright content?
Well, it's a very interesting question, and potentially for you as well, Scott, that piece of copyright content. And it's definitely a conversation that's being had. People have claimed that AI has used their content or inspired based on their content. So yeah, Scott, what's your thoughts on that whole piece of copyright content being used?
I think two components to it. One is just being very careful about what you put in the tool if you don't want it to be used to be trained elsewhere. So protecting not only copyright content, intellectual property. So one, being mindful of what you put in. Two, using the settings on the feature like I shared on Chat GPT to make sure that your information is not being used. The other one, I would say don't have a clear defined answer just because the laws and regulations for these tools have not kept up with how fast the technology is advancing. And we see variance from region to region, country to country around how they are dealing with this and regulating with it. So there's quite honestly no clear-cut answer because, as Andre mentioned, there are a number of organizations, whether it's the New York Times or somebody's college dissertation that it's been trained on. They're saying, well, wait, you haven't been, and when I say you, it's the chat tools, the open AIs, the Googles of the world really haven't been appropriately compensating those individuals. So really it tends to be happening at that level is really where we're seeing a lot of the conflict.
Interesting. Okay, we do have another question here, Scott, from Khaled in Dubai. He mentioned that it's a great presentation, and the question is there a way where output from ChatGPT could be zapped through Zapier or any similar or anything similar to automatically create PowerPoint slides?
My gut says yes. I have not done that yet, but it honestly seems like the sky is the limit when it comes to creating these integrations between ChatGPT type tools and Zapier and other applications. So just for example, when I'm developing sometimes presentations, I will give it the topic and say, structure this in a slide format and let me know what content should go on what slide, so to speak, right? So it says slide 1, slide 2, slide 3, here's your content. I can't imagine it being too difficult to create the zaps that goes into the PowerPoint slides.
Yeah, and one tool to look into, if you're open to not sticking with ChatGPT, is Microsoft's tool. So Microsoft's one is called Copilot, and they've started to integrate that into a lot of their the Microsoft suite of tools, so PowerPoint, Outlook, and the likes. And so one way would be to use their tool, which is inside of PowerPoint, so you wouldn't even need Zapier. You could go directly to Copilot to generate that slide based on a prompt.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
That's
right.
one thing we didn't mention today is Copilot is another fantastic tool that is out there.
Yeah, I've used it. It's amazing. So I do want to be mindful of time. We do have a couple of other questions here. But I think we can kind of move forward and then answer those questions separately.
Sure. Yeah. So, to quickly wrap up, there's two QR codes on the screen there. The first one, if any of this was interesting to you, if you've got any questions you'd like to kind of discuss after the call, potentially if you're not an Arlo customer and you'd like to learn more about if Arlo would be able to suit your business or help you, automate and grow your business, that first QR code is going to take you to a page to be able to book a time with myself. I'm more than happy to sit down and have a conversation with any of you on the call today. And then that second one is a really cool AI readiness assessment from Scott. So Scott, do you want to share a little bit more about that one?
Absolutely. Yeah. So if you just have general curiosity around where you stand when it comes to an understanding of Gen AI, you can take a photo of the QR code. And I think Bianca will also put the link in the chat. We can go in, redeem an access code to take a readiness assessment. I'll start to learn where you fall kind of on the scene when it comes to artificial intelligence. Perhaps I need to go attend some training, or if you are a training organization looking to offer artificial intelligence training, kind of give you a sense of some of the content that we have out there from a Gen AI perspective. And if you have more questions about logical operations, please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. More than happy to connect and answer any questions you may have.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks everyone for your time and for sticking around for an hour to hear our talk. Yeah, I see, Bianca, you've popped those links in the chat. So if the QR code is not working or you're joining on a mobile, those links are also there for you to access.